back to Books with Brooks. This episode we call a bonus book episode. We are going to discuss a book that is not our book club book this month or any other month, but it is a book that a friend and I have both read and that we really liked and really wanted to talk about. Our book club book this month that we're officially reading and we'll be back at the end of the month to fully discuss is called In 5 Years by Rebecca Searle. I think that's how you say her last name. I believe it is a time travel love story type of book. It was published in 2020. It's a New York Times bestseller. It was a Good Morning America book club book. I picked it because obviously this is the month of February, so don't be mad at me if you hate romance. Although I don't think this book is going to be like romance in quotes. I think it's more of a novel that is a love story. But I could be wrong because I haven't finished it yet. So pick that book up from the library or your local bookstore, and we'll be back to talk about it on the podcast at the end of the month. Going back to today's episode, I have my friend Carly here. Hi, Carly.
Hey, Brooks.
Hi. It almost sounded like I said Carly just then. Remember that show?
Yeah, I do.
I don't think I
starred in it.
You. That's right.
I have the copyright on my name.
Carly, tell us what book we're talking about because it was your suggestion.
Oh my gosh, what a pleasure. We're going to talk about Dark Matter by Blake Crouch.
Yes, Dark Matter by Blake Crouch.
Yes.
This book was published in 2016. It was a big hit, New York Times bestseller, published by Crown Publishing. I always like to check how books are performing on Goodreads, and this book has an extremely respectable 4.10 rating. Yes.
I'm upset that it's not a solid 5, or at least a 4.5 and up.
Yeah, I actually thought it was going to be higher than that as well. Yeah. I gave it, spoiler alert, I gave it 5 stars, which is pretty rare. That's a 5-star book for me, is a really one that I really, really liked.
It was so good.
Well, we can talk more about this, but I suspect that this book, it's a confusing book. It's sort of about the multiverse. It's like kind of time travel-y, and I think it's confusing, and I think there are quite a few plot holes due to that. Anytime you introduce time travel, it's like, there's a million ways to be like, well, that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, but I also think that because we haven't charted out the science, that there's allowed to be plot holes. Maybe I'm just too forgiving because it is such an interesting thing to think about, is the multiverse.
Right, the multiverse. Well, I also think I'm partial to this book because it's set in Chicago, which is really cool and fun.
I love.
And I wish they would make this book into a movie.
Wait, so at the end of the book, in the acknowledgments, Blake Crouch gives a shout out to the team that's helping adapt it into a movie.
So we need to go faster.
Yeah. Oh, God, I would love to watch it.
Yeah.
I've been watching a show called Dark on Netflix. It's a German show, so you have to read subtitles unless you speak German. And it is about time travel, but then it becomes about the multiverse because they're intertwined.
I do feel like the multiverse is maybe it's always been popular, but it does seem to be a popular literary device to introduce alternate realities and endings and stuff. This book was a little bit of Goosebumps vibes. You remember Goosebumps, choose your own ending?
Yes.
Childhood?
I adored Goosebumps until I got to the one that was about swimming pools where a monster would grab your leg from inside the swimming pool and pull you under. And then I was like, I'm out. I can't. You ruined my favorite thing.
You never recovered.
No, never. Absolutely not. Somebody always has to be in the deep end with me whenever I swim. I'm a grown adult.
To be clear, no longer a child.
No longer a child. Though I feel like we should define the multiverse for your listeners.
Oh, please go right ahead and do that for them.
So the multiverse is a theory that says that every decision you make makes a parallel universe. So it's not traveling forward or backward in time. It's time is traveling at the constant state. It's just that, Carly, who decided not to do this podcast, decided to get in the car and go to the grocery. Yes, totally rude. I would always talk about this book. But decided to go to the grocery, and on the way to the grocery saw a man two men fighting and she got out of her car and then she was accidentally shot, and like there's just so many decisions that lead to different parallel universes. So when we say multiverse, it's like infinite because we make decisions every second.
Right, constantly, all the time.
Yeah.
Right. I also, okay, I'm no scientist. I love to clarify on this podcast that I like have no real credentials in anything. I feel like the last one I was like, I'm not a doctor. Okay, that's obvious. But
you could be a doctor. I believe.
Thank you. I wonder if the multiverse is like expanding infinitely, or not infinitely, but what's it called where like things double?
Squared?
No, it's like okay.
I'm not a math person, so anybody yelling at the
okay, so we're not scientists and we're not mathematicians and we're not doctors.
No,
what are we? No, it's okay. Here's the point I'm trying to make, which is that I once read this thing that said like humans today are exposed to more information in an hour than like a person used to be exposed to in an entire year or something, or maybe it was like more written information. Right. It's all to say, I feel like we're making more decisions. Because life is more complicated and technology gives us access to so many more opportunities and options. So like, does that mean the multiverse is now way bigger than it used to be? I don't know.
I think, yes and no, because the multiverse was always infinite and you can't get bigger than infinite, even if you have more options.
Deep.
Yeah, that's real deep.
Whoa. You just blew my mind.
I think a big reason why I like thinking about the multiverse is a little bit spiritual, if you'll allow it.
I'll allow it just this
Thank
once.
you. Because I took some like history of religion classes back in my youth, and there was a debate on if humans have free will or not, and I claim I came up with this theory that is probably very off base, that like life is like a giant Plinko board. You always come to these decisions and you can go left or right, but you're still gonna fall one way. It just depends on which way you choose. But that also means that God, spiritual higher being, has already predetermined so many different outcomes for you. But it's infinite.
So is that the same as fate or destiny?
I don't know, because you get to choose. So you're your own free being, making choices of your own free will, but God is omnipotent? Omniscient? Omniscient, that's the word. Please edit that. God is editing. Omniscient.
All the stupid things we say go in.
God is omniscient, so therefore he knows where we're gonna end up, but he allows us to choose the route. Like, basically, our lifetimes are higher learning institutions where we have to learn lessons to become better beings.
So you think it's all about like morals?
Or I don't know.
That's okay. You don't have to.
Thank you. Well,
to be clear,
I'm not an elder
I also
either.
don't know. Yeah. We're going to take a quick break. And after the break, we're going to talk about the plot of Dark Matter. And we're going to get into lots of spoilers. So a great chance to pause the podcast and go and read the book. Ladies, are you tired of being the only one in your heterosexual relationship who grooms your downtown? This is a great gift idea. The Lawnmower 3.0 is premium. With waterproof technology, it can be used in the shower, and it features an LED light that illuminates grooming areas for a closer, more precise trim. Listeners of Books with Brooks get 20% off and free shipping if they use the code BOOKS at checkout at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com using the code BOOKS. Dark Matter by Blake Crouch is the story of a Chicago man named Jason Desson, who is a college physics professor. And one night, after like spending a lovely, beautiful night in his kitchen with his cute teenage son and his hot wife, he gets kidnapped and he gets taken to this like weird like futuristic facility and injected with something, and then he wakes up and like escapes and goes back home and discovers that like his family isn't there and he can't find them, and eventually he figures out after a series of unfortunate events that he's in a different multiverse.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I want to add that he wakes up in a lab, and it's like super futuristic, and everybody knows who he is and is giving him standing ovations, and they want to know like what was it like, and they tell him that he's been missing for 14 months, and then he's like, these people know my name and know my background, but they are not like speaking to my experience. And so he breaks out through a bathroom window, which like #relatable, and hoofs it home. And then like his home is not his home. Like it's the same brownstone in Chicago in Logan Square, except it's like only lived in by a single person. And, you know, everything's been updated and there's touches of him around, but like his hot wife and his quirky son are not there.
They're not.
They're not.
Yeah. So then we find out, so that's like the inciting action, and then we figure out that he has invented a machine that will take you to like other multiverses, and you kind of get to choose, but you don't know where you're going to end up, and so you just like step through, and it's like you're in a different multiverse. So it could be like a vicious hellscape, or it could be like really, really similar to the life that you remember, but just slightly different because you've made like slightly different choices, or one slightly different choice at some time. So he goes on this multiverse hunt to re-find his family that he remembers and lived this life with, and he wants, so it's kind of like a love story. I remember being like, is this book a love story when I read it? Like, how should it be classified?
It's like a thriller, mind-bending love story.
Yes, it is, because really his like motivation is to like find his wife, and he will like go to any lengths. Yeah, and son, of course.
Yeah,
his family. He will go to like any lengths to find them, and we find out, this is a big spoiler, so then we find out that he's being hunted by a bunch of different multiverse versions of himself.
Yes. So
which is very trippy.
Yeah, so when he escapes from the place he woke up from, that like high voltage lab, it's not the word I'm looking for, really high sophisticated security lab. Yeah, it was high security. The people at the company are chasing him because it's like a proprietary secret that he's been working on for the past, 10 years of his life, or that version of Jason. And so he goes into this 12 by 12 foot metal cube that has a really big magnetic pull to it. And I don't understand the science, but like he did like his graduate work on like doing this for an atom. And then he figured out how to blow it up into like a man-sized thing. And it's based off of Schrodinger's cat. Like
Schrodinger's cat.
Yes, if you put a cat into a box and close it with a poison that has a 50-50 chance of killing the cat or not, the cat is both alive and dead at the same time, therefore creating a multiverse. And it's only the power of observation that reveals which part of your universe you're in.
Yeah, so it's complicated. It's a complicated book, and I want to be careful because I don't want to spend the entire time talking about the plot of this book, because I think we usually could.
Yeah.
Because it's full of twists and turns and a bunch of like things that are like, wait, what? Mm-hmm. But I want to talk about like, more like the characters and sort of the regular stuff that we talk about in book club. So I think we've already established, so I don't know if I need to ask, but we both really liked this book.
Yeah.
It was a 5-star book. That's why we're talking about it. Because we read it years ago. Actually, I wonder what year I did read this. Maybe 2016. That's a long time ago.
Yeah. It
feels
like a long time ago for sure.
Yeah. And that's a long time really for a book to like stick with you and really stay in your mind. So It's a good book. And I also, Carly, have you read anything else by Blake Crouch?
You know what? No. But also before this, when people asked me what my favorite book was, it kind of changed to like what I was last reading or whatever.
Yeah.
But when I read this one, I was like, oh, this is it.
Wow. So you tell people this is your favorite book.
100%.
That's okay.
That's told coworkers to read it, like, and then they will come back and talk to me about it.
That's fun.
Delicious.
Yeah. This is delicious. Well, I will recommend to you, he has a new book out that just came out last year, and it's called Recursion. And it's not a sequel, but it has like really similar vibes to this book. And it's also really, really good. I don't know if it's better than this book, but it's amazing as well. And also like really needs to be a movie. In fact, have you watched Tenet?
No.
Okay, Tenet is this like big Christopher Nolan like blockbuster movie that obviously is just like released on streaming, and I've watched it twice because it's like,
I'm gonna write it down.
It has real like Recursion dark matter vibes in that this movie is about like a future society that has invented a way to make objects move in backwards entropy. So similarly, it's like, I don't understand the science of this, and I don't think I'm supposed
entropy.
to.
So does that mean that it undeteriorates?
It like
it rejuvenates?
Yeah. So like instead of shooting a bullet, you catch a bullet. Is the idea?
Whoa.
Yeah. So anyways, it's really trippy. I've watched it twice and I'm still like, okay, what happened in that movie? But it's pretty fun. It's a pretty wild ride. It moves at 100 miles an hour the whole time, which is really similar to both of these books.
Yeah.
So I think Recursion is great, especially if you like dark matter. Definitely pick it up. It has a really similar cover, but it's yellow, and this cover is like a highlighter orangey kind of color. He's known for his series called the Wayward Pines series, which also is made into a TV show, which I have not read any of them. I haven't watched them. But might be interesting if we like both of these books, and I did. So
yeah, I'm gonna check them out for sure.
Yeah, you should, and I'll lend you Recursion if you want it. I have it.
Ooh, yes.
What are the major themes of this book?
You know, I think like soulmates is one of them, because he encounters a lot of different versions of his wife, but he wants the one. Decisions and consequences.
Yeah. Definitely decisions and consequences. Yeah, those are both really good. I definitely think love, or like the importance of family. I also think it brought up a lot for me of like, I think a theme is self-identity and like what makes you you, what makes a person who they are, because he's battling with all these different versions of himself that are still him, but like they're not him. And he even like kills a bunch of them, which I kind of crazy. Like he really battles them, and it's kind of implied that like some of them are like evil, like doppelganger-ish, like versions of him, but they all like really want to be with his hot wife, so it's just this big competition. And I don't know, like what makes you you? Is it a particular experience? Is it a way of thinking? Is it like, I don't know.
Right. Could you kill you? Could you hold a conversation with you? I used to think about this because somebody posed this to me in middle school, and it kind of messed up my brain, which is like, if you met you on the street, would you like you?
Ooh.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, what if the answer is no?
I don't know.
What does that mean? That seems bad, but I guess I don't know why, because you change a lot. Like, you're the same person you are, and you can't like expect to have the same exact like mindset as you did when you were a child.
Right. Or like, you know, I'm pretty gregarious and like outgoing. I'm an extrovert, and when I'm around people, like that's what I exhibit. But I don't know that I would want to be around that type of person all the time. Like, I don't think I could be roommates with me.
Right. Yeah. They say like, don't try to date yourself. Like, you need to date someone who's a little different from you, and fill in the gaps a bit. Yeah. So it did bring up some really interesting questions, and I remember thinking, well, Carly, maybe you can remind me, because it's been a while since I read this and you just read it, but the one who ends up with Daniela and the son, whose name I forget right now.
Charlie,
thank you. That is the original Jason, right?
Yes. So he's our protagonist, but the latter half of the book is this existential crisis of these are all versions of him that got kidnapped that night, that escaped from the high-tech lab, and then went through different versions of the multiverse. You know, like there was just some decision he made in the different multiverses that gave him a different experience. And then, but they eventually found their way back. And then at the end, there's like at least 72 versions of him.
Right.
That's not accounting for like the versions of him that died. Or like decided to like, this is close enough, I'm gonna live here.
Yeah, that's crazy. It is quite trippy. Yeah, this book really it gives you a lot to think about. This is a really good one to discuss. I'm glad we're doing it. I also, so the book switches into Daniela's perspective at some point. So suddenly we've like been in our protagonist in the first person. I think is it in the first person? Actually, now I'm questioning myself. Yes.
You know what? It's in first person until it talks about the person that replaced him, the Jason that replaces him.
Interesting.
That's when it goes kind of into Daniela's perspective.
Right. Yeah. So that is like a really cool way to write it, but also like additionally confusing in an already like extremely confusing like series of plots.
Yeah.
But I think I liked it. I mean, I think I liked that device. Not the book as a whole. Obviously, I mean, like that, like literary device of like switching perspectives. Like, I think it works.
There's, Seth Meyer did a stand-up special where he did a whole, like, I think it was a half of his stand-up special, and then he flipped into the perspective of his wife, and then told jokes as her about the same situations that he talked about.
Whoa!
And it was so delicious and well delivered and good, and I was like, that is fucking wild, because I feel like I know his wife because he's speaking as her.
That's cool. What a great idea.
I think it's still on streaming. So.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny too, like how much the same story changes when you just switch into someone else's perspective. Like even if you're describing exactly the same events happening in exactly the same way that they happened, like factually accurate, like you're going to get a totally different story.
Right. Have you been at a dinner party with your partner or your best friend, and then you're like, this thing happened to us in the drive-thru at McDonald's, and like you start telling it, and then your friend or partner jumps in and they're like, but then this happened. You're like, oh, I guess it did, but it wasn't a significant thing for me.
Right.
Stay tuned.
Hey everybody, it's Sam Amico from Cavs on the Break NBA podcast. Be sure to give us a listen for all your Cleveland Cavaliers recaps, analysis, breakdowns, draft talk, free agency. The list goes on and on. Give us a listen, Cavs on the Break NBA podcast.
Okay, we should talk, Carly, about there is another character that we haven't discussed, and that is the character of Amanda. Yes. And Amanda is, what is she? A fellow physicist or like someone else at his?
No, she's a clinical psychologist at the company that Jason 2, the guy that kidnaps and swaps places with, at that company. And they've been working together for 9 years. She's smoking hottie and super smart and very kind.
Yeah, I remember thinking about this character like, dang, this is a really nice lady. Like,
yeah.
Almost thinking like she was unrealistic because she is like extremely selfless. She's like just wants to help him, even though he's like searching for his family and like but the other thing is like he's clearly like into her.
I think he recognizes like the kindness and selflessness of her actions and also how helpful she is. But there's a point where she's like, we've gone through a harrowing experience. Not one, several. And then she climbs into his bed and it's kind of like giving him the green light. And she's like, do you want me to stop? And he's like, I don't want you to, but I need you to. Which I thought was like a little unrealistic because it's like, you've been gone from your wife for a long time. And also you don't know if you're ever going to get back there.
Right. Yeah. And doesn't something happen where they like run out of serums? They only have like 2 more.
Yeah. Well, at a certain point, this is a big spoiler, she decides to go on her own because his quest for his wife Daniela and son Charlie is too much for her to bear, because it's like driving him crazy and she can't support him in that. Which is like,
right.
that's totally understandable. Have you ever had a friend that has like extreme anxiety and then you're having your own panic attack and you're like, I love you, I have to deal with this first.
Gotta get out of here.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a really good way to put
Yeah.
it. Yeah. Yeah, I thought she was a really interesting character of like, because I guess I don't know. I mean, I'm really struggling with how to even describe her, because I don't want to say she's just a prop. She's just someone who's like, she's just a character whose only like reason for being is to help our protagonist.
I mean, well, it kind of does become that, because the reason she gets into the box with him to escape the high-tech company is because she learns that that company had killed people in Jason's life in order to get him back into like the facility. And so she's
Right.
like, I did not sign up for this shit. I'm helping you get out of here before they kill you. And then in the process, she can't go back because then she'll get killed. So then she's super homeless.
So she's like also lost in the multiverse.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right. And we don't really find out what happens to her, do we?
No.
She just goes off on her own to like keep exploring.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Well, and then at the end, so the end of the book, obviously is a major spoiler. I'm tired of saying that. You guys know we're spoiling everything. You get it. This is a book podcast. Yeah. But he is successful. He does get back to his like original, his OG hot wife and quirky son.
Yeah.
And they like battle through, how many did you say? 72. They battle through 72 Jasons, like other versions of himself. Which I remember thinking, like, if I were her, Daniela, I would be so suspicious. Like, which Jason is which Jason?
Well, there's a series of like tiny tests that she does, and he explains it, she explains it, of proving that it's the guy that she, you know, built a life with. But also, there's technically 72 other Jasons that she built a life with. Right. However, our Jason, the protagonist, gets to her first because he decides to do something random based on an experience that only he had.
I loved that.
Yes.
Okay, that was my favorite part of the book. Do you want to tell us what happened?
Yes. So he's back in his world with his hot Daniela and quirky Charlie, and he's trying to figure out a way to get back into their lives and explain what has happened, but also Jason 2, the guy that kidnapped and sent him back to the facility, is there. So he has to devise a plan. He goes to a hotel, logs on to their business center, like online, logs in, like wants to create a fake email address, but it's already taken, but he guesses at the password. And of course he knows the password because it was built by somebody else, like one of the other Jasons. So there's a chat room with 72 other Jasons. Right. Okay. Fast forward. So now we know that there are 72 other Jasons trying to get back into Daniela and Charlie's life. So he goes to a bar because they're chasing him. They're trying to kill him. He goes into the bar. There's a Bulls game. Everybody's like rowdy as fuck because Chicago rules. And
true.
A guy, after the game is over, a very drunk guy, like sidles up to him and is like, hey, let's talk about the Bulls postseason. And he's like, ignores him because he's got his own troubles. And the guy's like, fuck you. Sorry to curse on your podcast.
No, I told you, it's allowed.
But then eventually is so belligerent that he gets kicked out by the bouncers, this drunk guy. So that gives Jason an idea of he's going to try to get arrested so that Daniela has to come down to the police station and pick him up. And
right.
So he does. And he's the first one to get to them.
Well, but like, in the idea behind it is that he has to do something so out of character that no other versions of himself would think to do, because he has to create like he has to make this like outlandish, wild decision in order to like change the course of all of their lives. It was just really, I thought it was such a cool idea of like, and I used to think all the time about like, okay, if I had to do like the craziest thing right now, if I had to do something just like at the most out of character as possible,
Yes.
like what would it be? And I would think about that in different
Ooh.
situations. Like, what would I do right now to like change the outcome of the multiverse?
Oh, that's wild. That's something that like truly gives me anxiety because I don't want to do something that's not aligned with my values, but like he has to do that in order to get arrested and to find her and see her. And
yeah, and then it worked. His plan totally works.
Yes.
So they get away and they battle the Jasons. I mean, obviously a ton of other stuff happens.
Yes.
I'm blasting through
Yeah.
this, but because I want to get to the very end, which is that so original Jason
Mhm.
takes Daniela and Charlie and they go back to the lab
Mhm.
and they decide to let Charlie choose where they go next.
Yes.
It'll be like the last place that they go, and they're gonna go hide in the multiverse and get away from the other Jasons.
Right.
And so it's just like they let Charlie open a door basically, and that's how the book ends.
Yep. Because they decide that they can't live in a world where there's 72 or now 60 or whatever after how many die. Jasons are trying to get back into their life that they once knew. So their only option is to like go into a different world.
So it's kind of a cool like cliffhanger ending, but I imagine that a lot of readers found it to be unsatisfying because there's not there's not a super heavy resolution. It's just sort of like, I mean, they did it, like they're reunited. So in that way, there is a resolution, but you don't really know if they live happily ever after because a lot of the multiverses that they go into are like horrible. Like you can't live in them. Basically.
That's true, but the multiverses are based on like your emotional state when you open the door.
Oh, that's right. I forgot
Yeah,
about that. And that's part of why Amanda leaves because she's like, I think
Yeah.
like I'm influencing like where we end up and it needs to just be you.
Mhm.
That's right. I forgot about that.
But like they're all in a really good mood because they escaped death by Jason. And now they're like giving confidence to Charlie and he's like, what? Really? And he's a 15-year-old like kid who loves sketching and stuff. And then they're just happy to be reunited. And then they open the door and I mean, how else do you end a book like that?
Right, exactly. Yeah. I mean, it is, yeah, that's a really good question. I don't know. I mean, because you can't even like kill all of, yeah, I don't know. That's a great question.
You know what I think about sometimes though?
What?
Is there's like a climactic scene where a bunch of Jasons die. I just think about the police officers who have to find that scene and investigate it. And they're like, all of these men look the same. They have the same fingerprints. They have the same blood type and DNA.
That's such a good point.
They must be like, what the fuck?
Yeah. They'll like, maybe they think clones or something.
Yeah.
You know?
Mhm.
All right. My last question for you, Carly. And I know we could talk about this book all night
Right.
long, and we really, really could because it is so complicated and it brings up so many questions about like reality and identity
Yeah.
and family and all the stuff we've touched on. But
Plinko.
okay. If Plinko, if given the opportunity, would you try going into a different multiverse? If this technology existed, would you do it?
I can say with absolute certainty, absolutely not. No.
You would not do it.
No. Uh-uh.
So you're not curious about how different your life would be if you'd made like one decision differently.
Oh, I'm 100% curious, but like, I don't think that making a different decision is going to make my life better. I also am like an above average happy person. So why mess with what I have now when I really enjoy it? I mean, like maybe if I was down on my luck and things were hard and, you know, all my family was dead, then maybe I would try
There
to
you
go
go.
back. But
Yeah, of like what would cause you to, I mean, that's dark. That's dark to think about. I
Truly.
guess we don't need to go there. But I mean, I feel the same way. Like I definitely wouldn't do it because you have such little control over where you would end up and like what would be different. It's not like you get to like be like, okay, in this life I'm gonna be like a princess. And, like,
right.
it's not that simple. Oh, you know what scene really stuck with me? Okay, I swear we'll stop after this. There's a scene where he goes into a multiverse and it's like almost exactly the same Chicago, except they have that crazy high speed
Think about it all the
train.
time.
Oh my God, you
Yes!
do? I think about it all the time.
So the L is a elevated train. It's super fucking rickety and like smells, and it's terrible but functional, and so it's great. But in this version of reality, Amanda picks it and they go to somewhere that feels futuristic, and the L is like a high-speed train, and then it docks at
that you like strap
into
in,
and it can tell when you're not strapped in, which I'm like, yes, thank you for being concerned about my safety.
It's like some Elon Musk shit for real.
I just want to put this worm in your ear. Sometimes I think about what would happen if I went to a different college. And not that like my college experience is super seminal and informed me, even though I'm wearing a sweatshirt from there. But I really had a choice between going to Ohio State or University of Boulder in Colorado, or University of Colorado at Boulder. And like those Carlys would have absolutely been very different.
Yeah, that's such a big decision point.
Right.
In our lives is like, choosing a college. And you do I remember thinking about it that way almost. Like it is a multiverse. Like if I go here, I'll become like this. If I go here, I'll become like this. And if I go here, I'll become like this. And it's not exactly that way. But yeah, I'd feel you. Oh, I think similarly about like after graduation, which is another like really big pivotal moment. Like if I hadn't moved to Chicago, how different would my life be today?
That's so true.
Yeah, I'm sure everyone has like kind of those moments. Mm-hmm. Yes. Well, Carly, such a pleasure. Thank you for suggesting this book, for rereading it. And it's just, we could talk about it forever. I feel like we need to keep texting after this because there's a lot of stuff we didn't get to, but
I still have more existential questions that I need to rock your world with.
For sure. This book is extremely existential. You're going to close it and be like, who am I? Where am I? What year is it? Like, it's great. But so pick it up. Dark Matter by Blake Crouch and Recursion by Blake Crouch. Both great. Again, our Books with Brooks book, I'll say that 3 times fast, in February is In 5 Years by Rebecca Searle. Carly, I think you've already finished it, haven't you?
I have.
Okay. No spoilers, but I'm proud of you.
Thank you.
You're way ahead of me.
I took about a year and a half break from book club, so I'm happy to be back.
Oh, welcome back. Welcome back. You're always welcome back. Everyone's always welcome back. Reading is so important, and I do think keeping it as a habit in your life is really essential. If you read 1 book a month, you're way more likely to read more than that. But we all fall off the wagon and sometimes reading just doesn't fit. And I totally understand. So welcome back. And thank you so much for joining. And I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. This was very fun. I appreciate just seeing your face and talking about the multiverse.
Yes. Oh yeah. We are on Zoom, so we are staring at each other.
Yes.
Welcome to life in the pandemic.
2021, the future, the multiverse.
All right, happy reading.
Books with Brooks is produced by Mo Barrow with theme music by Jonathan Allen. Books with Brooks is part of the Press Play Podcast Network, which empowers hosts to create high-quality professional shows that inspire and entertain. If you've been dreaming of hosting your own podcast, we can help. Just email us at content@pressplaypodcast.com to get started today.